Good.
Awesome. So today's discussion is on relationships. Some of you know, some of you don't know that is where I have my degree is in marriage, couples, and family counseling. Also community care and counseling, also social work. So I've been dealing with relationships on in various components for a very long time. And I'm also married with kids. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a coworker, all these things that constitute relationships. And so um I'm going to share with you all what I have learned, and I'm open to learning what y'all have learned. So, this is a discussion. This is not a lecture. I'm going to be talking most of the time, but if you have something to say, a comment, a question, or anything, feel free to, unmute, raise your hand, however you want to do it. But thank you all for joining me. Again, this discussion is on relationships. And one thing I'll start by saying is that relationships, regardless of the type, need God to be successful. Now, y'all know, my background is a believer, and so for me, my truth, and I feel that the truth is that we need God, or we need a strong foundation in order to have a successful relationship, regardless of what type. Like I said, it could be, a marriage, it could be a friendship, it could be, parenting. Regardless, you need God's guidance in order for your relationships to be successful. So, my question to you all is, what is your foundation? That could be rhetorical or you can answer it. But what is your foundation in your relationships? What value do you assign to each relationship? Like, what's the measure? Are they all the same? Do you treat your associates the same way that you treat your best friend? Do you treat your spouse the same way you do your coworkers? Or is there a difference? And can we tell the difference? And if we can tell the difference, is it leaning towards the one that you say you love the most? Or is it showing the opposite? What is being reflected in the way that you treat your spouse, in the way that, or whatever relationship, in the way that you show your value to somebody? Is it reflective of what you say? I hope that question makes sense, but it's meant to make you think. So then also, and hey Jalen, glad to have you on. Um, Also, how do the people in your life value their relationship with you? Is it the same? Do y'all have the same kind of measure for each other, or is it kind of lopsided? Is it where one person values the other person more than the other? That matters. All questions to be thinking about. Like I said, you're more than welcome to answer at any point, but you don't have to. These are just things that I feel like, as I've gone through the years, questions that I've had to ask myself about the relationships that I have with different people. Also, do you know the difference between love and being in love? There is a difference. There's also a difference between love and infatuation, being in love and being infatuated. So for me, being in love versus being infatuated, infatuated is more temporary. It's more based on your mood in that moment. It's based on what's happening in that moment. But when you're in love with somebody, it can be one of those things that's long suffering. Like when I say the difference between love and being in love, I love my children, but I'm in love with my husband. So when I say that is different, that's one thing, but also being in love and being infatuated. I was infatuated with my boyfriends before I got to my husband, but I'm in love with my husband. Why? Because my being in love is long term. My being in love is intentional. My being in love is um it's long suffering. I am still in love with my husband even though we might not always agree. right? And a lot of people try to discount being in love as just a fleeting feeling, but they're mistaking being in love with being infatuated. Make sense? Um, you can love people to the same degree, but in a different way. And this is kind of what I was talking about when I said the difference between love and being in love. So I love my children a whole lot to the same degree that I love my husband, but I don't love them in the same way. The way that I express my love, the way that I handle my love, the way that I communicate my love, the way that I show it can look different. But I'm not it's not where, and even amongst my kids, the way that I express love to each one may look different, but it should have the same value, right? So, for example, when I'm talking about my kids, I have one child that is, well, two children actually, who are very affectionate. And the way that they receive love is they want lots of hugs and cuddles and all the things. They want to be they like words of affirmation. They like for you to tell them how great they did and all this other stuff. Whereas my son, he can be affectionate, but that's not really what speaks to him. What speaks to him is, you telling him you're proud of him, which is a words of affirmation, but also like he likes gifts, he likes service, he likes different things. And so the way that my love looks towards him may look different than the way it looks towards my affectionate girls, but there's no um, difference in the value of love. It's just based on the way that they receive love, not just the way that I want to give it and not the way that I normally express it, but it's the way that they receive it that speaks to them and lets them know that I see you and I value you in the way that you need to be seen and valued, right? Um, and with that being said, love is very selfless. You know, God showed us throughout the Bible when it says that God is love, God's love was very sacrificial. And we're supposed to replicate that in our relationships with anybody that we say that we love, right? Um, but here's another question on that same front. What happens when those different ways of loving clash? Now that's a question I want y'all to answer. It doesn't have to be everybody, but somebody can tell me what happens when the way that you love one person versus the way that you love somebody else clashes. It could be in the form of comparison, um, any type of way that it could clash. Any thoughts?
I guess I'll go. I was thinking when you were talking about the different love languages and how a lot of times whatever my love language is, it's how I express love to other people. But it can clash in a way where whatever my love language is, if I'm expressing to someone else and they can care less about it. But I'm thinking
Mhm.
that they should be more appreciative of how I'm expressing love. But me not thinking, okay, well, I need to really show them love the way they feel loved, not how I
Mhm.
feel loved. So I think that can be where you can find some tension in relationships when you're trying to um, express love the way you want to feel loved.
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly it. It can clash even though you love a person and you love them strongly. Um, we might not always feel it. And the other thing about it is there's a flip side to showing people love in the way that they best receive. You also have, I'm trying to show you love in the way that I express it and you're not receiving it. And so therefore I feel rejected. And so in that there has to be some communication. There has to be some compromise. When my husband and I first got married, um, we kind of we're trying to feel our way through loving each other the best way that we knew how. Sorry, the best way that we knew how. But um, when we would express, go on out, Lena. When we would express our love, sometimes we would feel like, well, you didn't appreciate that thing that I did. And this was how I show love to somebody. And so since you didn't appreciate it, I feel like we don't love each other the same way. And that wasn't the case. We had to communicate with each other and we had to explain that, like, for example, my love language is service. I could care less how many gifts you give me. I could care less how beautiful you tell me I am all the time. Like, that doesn't resonate to me if I don't see acts of service. So when I say acts of service, it doesn't have to be something grand all the time. It doesn't have to be, oh, you mowed the lawn today, you took out the trash, all of that. Sometimes it's just, you know, you held the door open for me, or you um made sure to put the toilet seat down. I mean, it just little things that let me know that you're considerate of me. Those acts of service speak to me. Whereas for him, he was showering me with words of affirmation. He would, you know, buy me little things here and there. And again, it wasn't that I wasn't appreciative. It was that the way that I received love, I had to acknowledge to him, I see what you're doing and I appreciate what you're doing. But let me tell you a little bit about the things that I feel expressed to me that you love me. Like, for example, you might tell me how beautiful I am, but you left all the clothes in front of the door. And I'm like, it would have been nice if you had put your clothes in the hamper that's 2 feet over, you know. And this is not, I'm not saying this as directed to men because women do it too. I'm just saying sometimes we forget that those little acts, those little small things express love as well. And so we have to be in tune with whomever it is. Like I said, it could be your best friend. Your best friend may be um when special occasions come around, she always wants to spend some time with you, or he always wants to spend some time with you because they value quality time. You may have sent a gift, but it may not matter to them as much as if you had been there, right? So there has to be, again, a compromise, and there has to be communication in order for us to express love and in order for us to get past the clashing. But also you want to filter it through the word of God. what's what is right? What does God say about it? What does God say love is? You know, am am I doing things that reflect that? What is order? um how does God say my household should be structured in regards to how I do what I do for whom? It's not about whose side you're on, but are you on the side of right? So it's like, you know, for example, you may, let's just say it's a disagreement between your mama and your sister, but your mama's wrong. Now, we've been taught to respect our parents, and I'm not saying disrespect your parent, but what I am saying is you can say whatever you need to say in a loving way, especially when you have prayed ahead of time and you have tilled the ground and you have nurtured that relationship. And the whole point is, I don't want to damage my relationship with either one of you, but the way that I'm going to choose to handle this situation is I'm going to always be on the side of right. So if mama's wrong, I'm going to try to explain sister's point of view, right? And I'm going to try to explain to sister why mom might see things the way that she sees. But at the end of the day, we we're trying to preserve our relationships while still being doing the right thing, right? Any questions? I'm gonna stop right here and let you all ask any questions or make any comment about what we've already said.
Hey, I'm always the middleman between my mom and sister.
See,
Always,
perfect example for you.
always. So I think that that's real, and I do find myself in those situations where my mom is clearly wrong. I have to watch how I express. You know,
Hmm.
my sister. she handles my mom like she's the same age, like my
Um,
mom is her age, and that
mhm.
really really irks my mom.
Right.
She thinks that that's a lack of respect, and it is. And so, but I tried to get my mom not to focus on that, and let's find out if what you're upset about is actually a real issue. And
Hmm.
it is at times. And so I have to try to talk about the issue and not how my sister's tone or words made her feel. Let's talk about the issue,
Hmm.
and then we can kind of come back to the other part, which we may
Yeah.
not be
Yeah.
able to fix because this has been years. My sister's 47 now, so I don't think
Mm.
she can change, but I don't think she will. But yeah, that is a situation that I find myself in like twice a month almost with those two.
Wow. Well, and the thing about it is, like you said, we're not going to ignore mom's feelings, but what we do want to get down to is the actual message. What is the message behind what your sister is trying to say, even if her delivery is wrong? Delivery matters as well. All of those things matter, but we have to prioritize and focus on the main thing, and then we delve into the rest of it. But at the end of the day, our job again is to make sure we're trying to do things right, and we're making sure that the people that we are dealing with know that we love them. Yeah, we might disagree, we might even fall out, but reconciliation is possible. Again, when you have God, and when you pray for the right words, when you're trying to do the right thing, sometimes it implodes, sometimes it explodes, but sometimes God just smooth it right on out. So so we have to use wisdom in all of that. And different circumstances call for different responses from you. So, you know, just like life is changing, just like, people may be doing good one day and not doing good the next day, whatever's going on, you can't always just um, do the same thing every time. You have to be able to adapt to the situation, able to adapt to whomever it is that you're responding to. It's not a one size fits all when it comes to relationships. For example, as parents, like I said, each child is different and requires a different response from you. Um, I'll use again my kids. One of my children, you can look at them sideways, or you can call their name, the full government name, and they'll straighten up. The other one, you might have to use the rod. Each child is different, but either way, whatever you do needs to be fair. And let's just say, as a partner or a spouse, your current partner may have different needs or different desires than the last partner you had. Most people don't marry the first person they date. If you did, blessings to you. But most of us dated somebody before we ended up with the person that we're with. And so we learn things along the way. But just because we learn something along the way doesn't mean that that applies to the person we end up with. So again, that different circumstance calls for a different response from you. The different person requires something different of you. Um, and although there are some patterns or some staples or guidelines that you should still try to make sure you love them like they need to be loved, and you communicate how you need to be loved. It's not one-sided either. This is not happy wife, happy life. This is happy spouse, happy house. It's and that, and again, not just talking about um romantic relationships, but even in friendships, it shouldn't be one-sided. Sometimes there are some seasons where it will feel one-sided, but it shouldn't be one-sided all the time, right? Sometimes you'll have to lean more heavily on them, or they'll have to lean more heavily on you. But again, it shouldn't be consistently where one person is leaning on the other person, wearing them out. Um, so just being fair within those relationships. And some of the biggest components of a successful relationship, as I said, my foundation is always Christ, but Christ, clear communication and comprehension, heavy on the and comprehension, because you can be saying the same thing but meaning two different things. Um, Compromise. consistency, and conviction. So when I say Christ is the foundation, the Bible tells us what love is. And when you apply those things in your relationship, regardless of what type of relationship, things tend to flow a little bit smoother. Clear communication. Even though you love your spouse, or even though you love your sister, or whoever it is that you love, y'all might have grown up in the same household. Whatever the case may be, clear communication is still necessary, because you still have different perspectives, you still have different experiences, and all these things. And when we assume too much, then we tend not to communicate how we feel and what we think, what we believe, what we value. We tend not to communicate those when we think somebody's already on the same page with us. But we can't assume that, because even though there may be similarities, there are going to be some areas where you see things differently. And that doesn't mean that one person is right and one person is wrong. It just means it's different. And you have to communicate that in order to complement each other instead of conflicting with each other. Comprehension, like I said, what means one thing to me may mean something different to you. I have a real bad habit of saying, when my husband asks me a question, I have a real bad habit of saying, I guess. And I know that gets on his nerves. And so I try to do a little bit better. But to him, I guess means I have hesitation. But to me, I guess means like, I guess, like, sure. Not like, I don't think so. He takes it more like, I don't think so, than me just being like, that'll be cool. You know what I'm saying? There's two different messages, but it could be taken either way. So because I know that my I guess to him is skewed a certain way, then I have to be careful when I use that term or how I use that term, because now I have comprehension from the communication of how he perceives what I said. Compromise. Relationships are meant to enrich both of your lives, which means there's going to have to be sacrifice on both sides. It doesn't mean, when we say compromise, we don't mean lose yourself, but we also don't mean be selfish. It should be a balance. And then consistency. I don't do well personally with somebody who's one way one day, a different way the next day. I don't know what I'm going to get. We're not doing the Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. No, I need you to have some consistency in the way you respond to me. I know you're not going to have great days every day. I know you're not going to have bad days every day, but there should be some consistency in your character at the very least, right? And then, speaking of character, conviction. Conviction causes you to not do things that you shouldn't do. Conviction causes you to not hold grudges. Conviction causes you to not be unfaithful. Conviction causes you to do for your spouse, even when, or your friend, or your sibling, or your parent, even when they haven't quite treated you the way you felt like you needed to be treated. Conviction oftentimes comes from your relationship with Christ, but conviction in general is when you have a strong desire to do the right thing regardless, right? So those are the things that I feel like are some of the biggest components to having a successful relationship. And it's not all about what you can get out of it. It is about how well you can show the love of Christ, and heavy on the and, how you receive love from the people that say they love you. And it's okay to recognize and act on when somebody doesn't love you, right? You have to have some value of yourself. Again, we can't keep doing the one-sided thing. That's kind of what, Matilda and them did back in the day when, she was at home with all 12 of the kids and Papa had a family on the other side of town. That's not love. It was longevity, but it wasn't love. I'm in this thing for the long haul, but I want it to have love all weaved into it, right? So we're not talking about sacrificing to the point where you are not benefiting at all from being in this relationship. It's not, again, it's not one-sided. You are both the prize. You are both the gift. When God puts you with this person, again, whether friend, lover, or whatever, when God puts you with the person, your presence should be a present. Their presence should be a present. It should be an exchange. And not in the way of I'm doing this so you can do that for me, but in the way of if both of us are fulfilled by each other, then there's nowhere else to look. We're both getting something from this relationship. You're on the same team with whomever it is that you have a relationship with. It shouldn't be you versus them. It's you and them versus the world, or you and them versus the devil, or whatever. But when you're in a relationship that you're trying to nurture with somebody else, they are not your enemy, or they shouldn't be, because otherwise there's no point in having a relationship. One thing that I think kind of helps that is trying to outdo each other in love, not for the accolades, but so that the one that you love never has a moment to question your love. Because the devil will try to creep in those moments of uncertainty, in those moments of discord, in those moments of silence, and he'll try to tell you that this person doesn't love you the way that they said they did, because in that moment you allowed thoughts of maybe something they did in the past, or maybe something somebody else did in the past, to make you question that. And so when you intentionally show love and intentionally try to make sure this person recognizes your love for them, it doesn't give the devil as much room to manipulate them and to influence them. Another thing, when I say the devil tries to creep in with silence, we can't confuse silence for peace. Sometimes we have two people walking around the house and neither one of them is speaking to each other. And just because y'all ain't going off and cussing each other out and fussing and arguing and fighting doesn't mean that that's peace. Sometimes they're stonewalling. Sometimes you've done something to offend me. Now I don't have nothing to say to you. That's not peace. That's silence. But that's not peace. It's using silence to hurt somebody. And that's not of God. That is not how you nurture a relationship. That's not how you get your point across. What you can do instead is be a peacemaker, which is an active role in bringing about peace through that communication, through that compromise, through that comprehension, through that conviction and that consistency. And not just being a peacekeeper, because a peacekeeper is that person that just has that passive appeasement, which means that's another side of silence, where I'm not trying to punish you, but I'm so afraid to say something to you, because if I say something, it's gonna spark a fire or spark a fight, and so I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut. But the problem never gets fixed that way. So again, silence in and of itself is not the answer. And it is not equivalent to peace. So we ask questions for solutions, not for wins. So if I say, let's just say I did something to my husband and he didn't like it, and he asked me, what made you do that? I shouldn't automatically get offended and then become defensive about him asking me that question, if I understand that he's asking the question so that we can find a solution to the problem, versus him trying to win on his point of view and me trying to win on my point of view. It's not about winning. We win together. It's about finding a solution to whatever it is that's bothering us, or whatever it is that is causing us to have some level of discord. The Bible says to be angry and sin not, and let not the sun go down on your wrath. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't take time to reflect and then come back to it. What the Bible is basically saying is don't hold grudges and don't carry it on for so long that it becomes a punishment to each other, right? Um, be accountable and take ownership of what you do, but don't take ownership of other people's flaws. I used to struggle with this real bad, and sometimes I still have to catch myself because I would apologize for what you did and for what I did. And one thing that didn't do for me is allow the other person to really rectify the situation and to really reconcile the situation, because I was taking on the full brunt of what happened, even when the whole thing might not have been my fault. And so that made me feel lower, but it also made them feel like they were always right, which wasn't the case. That, like I said, that's more like being a peacekeeper, where we have that passive appeasement where we're just trying to silence the trouble instead of bringing peace from it. Um, Pausing for a second, let y'all have something to say. Hey, Star, I noticed that you joined us. Glad to have you.
Hey, Travay. Sorry, I was late. I was on a life group at took
All good, honey.
7. Okay, bye.
We still glad to have you. Anybody have anything to say about?
Yeah, I got something. I think
Mm-hmm,
what I see the number one issue is the communication. And
mm-hmm,
everybody says that they know how to communicate, but it's when you get into the thick of a good disagreement that you find out that they can't. Now,
mm-hmm,
I am the type where if I have a problem, I can talk about it until we come to a resolution or till we call a timeout. But
mm-hmm,
I won't walk away mad about it. You know,
mm-hmm,
we're not going to agree on everything, but what I realized in personal relationships, business relationships, friendships, it's always the same. You don't know the level of communication that a person has until you get into something that's really tough, and then the true
mm-hmm,
colors come out. So it may be all good for months, years until you get into something really heavy, and you find out that
mm-hmm.
they can't communicate on that level. That's
Right.
my experience.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. Everybody doesn't know how to communicate. Everybody wasn't raised in a household where communication was even a thing. Sometimes people are raised in a household where, be seen and not heard, or, where everything the parent says is right, or any kind of background could hinder a person from really learning how to communicate effectively and clearly. Um, and sometimes we don't have the words for what it is that we're feeling, and we get flustered when we can't really put words to it and describe it the way that we're trying to express it, or we get flustered when what we said is misinterpreted by the person that's supposed to be receiving it. And so it's extremely important that we have that clear communication. But that goes back to what I was saying about when I use the term I guess a lot. We have to communicate what that means. We have to become translators or dictionaries in regards to this is what I mean by this. That way the person can at least have something to work with. And we can work on communicating it in a way that they understand. Because sometimes we're trying to talk to people on a college level, but they have an eighth grade understanding. And sometimes we have to break it down, right? Go ahead, Star.
Something you said that was good was don't mistake silence for peace.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a marriage, I was married for a very long time, and um, silence was a big thing in my household. And then, but what I recognized was there would be silence when something was wrong, and then we would come back together, but you come back together as if nothing has happened. So you're
Mm-hmm.
really addressing the issue. So whoever was hurt or whoever felt offended or whatever had happened, you just kind of sweep it under the rug. And I always say, then you end up tripping over the rug.
Exactly, because then those things pile up. If you don't ever resolve the issue, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just dissipate. It still stays there. And even if I don't remember exactly what you did 10 years ago, if I never got resolved from it, I start to see patterns in that.
Yeah.
And those patterns add up for me. And for you, if I never acknowledge where I'm wrong, if I never come back and say, how back in the day when, I don't know if y'all parents did this, but when your parent did something and, like, let's just say they blamed you for something, but it was really your sibling that did it, and they don't ever tell you that, I'm sorry, I mistook, what happened for what you did. Instead, they'd be like, you hungry?
Yeah.
That's not an apology. You just glazed over the fact that you fussed me out and gave me a whooping for something I didn't even do. Right?
Yeah.
Right? We do the same thing in romantic relationships. We do the same thing with coworkers. We do the same thing with all kinds of relationships. When we just glaze over the problem, then it just mounts up. It just keeps on building up versus being resolved. And it's like a cancer. It's like if you never get the treatment that you need, it just grows and grows and grows. And it could be like an infection. Like it can infect other areas because it just keeps growing,
Yeah.
right? You look like you had something to say, Chris. That's why I'm pausing.
You get, this is so good. I got so many thoughts, so I'm just trying to take it all in. I'll wait. This is good.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of just awareness. It,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we're in relationships, we try to communicate things to, individuals, and they can never see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just like you were talking about, you're trying to explain things on a college level, but they have an eighth grade understanding. And it's like, I mean, it's like, it's to the point where, okay, how many times can I explain or try to tell you what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
But you
Mm-hmm.
don't see it. So in the end, it's like, okay, I'm just going to give up. If you can't see it, then what's the point of me continuing to try to communicate something that can't be seen?
Well, so I like that point, but here's a
Mm-hmm.
question that I'm thinking about now. If the communication gap is that wide, why is it that we didn't see that they were on the eighth grade level sooner? Why did it take some conflict before we recognized that the level of communication was not balanced? So, why didn't I see that earlier? Was I blinded by, like you said, infatuation? Was I, what was it that didn't allow me to see that we had a disconnect there?
I agree. And it could be that infatuation, but it could also be that we never got into the weeds. Like we never got into those deep discussions where I could really tell the difference. Because if you talk to an eighth grader long enough, you might think how smart they are until you compare it to a situation where you're talking to a college student. I mean, sometimes it's not until you get to that place that those things are exposed. And then, Tiffany, like you were saying, why is it that when we try to communicate with people, they can't see themselves, or when they try to communicate with us, why we can't see ourselves? A lot of times we take offense to any type of flaw that might be exposed. We are a people who are afraid of being exposed. But not only that, sometimes we just can't see it because, again, it could be the way we were raised. It could be where our mama always chose our side and we thought that we were right all the time. It could be where we just have a totally different perspective of the situation and we find it hard to see. And it kind of reminds me of that story in the Bible where David had taken Uriah's wife Bathsheba as his own. And, when the prophet came to tell him the story about it, he didn't see himself. He said the man that did that needs to be killed, not realizing that he was that man. And so sometimes you have to plant the seed and let God expose it to them. And you have to pray and say, God, this is really a concern of mine, and I really want so and so to see what I'm trying to say. And not only what I'm trying to say, but help me to see their perspective as well. Help us to be able to see what each other is saying, and that way you can have that divine intervention that would allow their eyes to be open, because again, sometimes God just needs to send somebody else to say the same thing that you've been saying for years in order for them to recognize it, right? Because sometimes when we're too close, we can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes when, just like they didn't receive Jesus because he was, close and he was somebody that they were familiar with. Sometimes we can't take correction from somebody because they're so close to us, we don't see it, and we take that relationship for granted. And so sometimes it takes somebody that's a little bit farther out, or somebody that has, a perspective that they respect, to come and say the same thing for the light bulb to come on, right? It happens. It's unfortunate, but we do it too. It's not just them always, being in denial. Sometimes we're in denial. Any other comments?
So this makes me think about my sons, Chris and Nick. They're 4 years apart and raised together, but I have to talk to them completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And now that Nick is 25, I still have to talk to him. He likes sweet words. I still have to treat him like he's my baby boy,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to Chris just straight up.
Mm-hmm.
And if Nick and I get a little sideways, I have to give Nick a little time, and I have to call Chris and say, "Hey, have you talked to your brother?" Because he can get through and say what
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say, or he can say it a little
Mm-hmm.
softer, I guess. But
Right.
yeah.
Right. And again, that's part of knowing what the person can and cannot receive. And that was part of the conversation that we were having earlier, where I was talking about when you have to parent differently, but you love the same. You know, you have to handle people according to what they can handle. And sometimes you do have to give them a little nudge, but that nudge should not be something that's like a punishment, or something that's like you gonna have do it my way or no way. Like it's not a way of manipulation. It's in order to help somebody to become better. You're working together with whomever it is to influence each other to be the best versions of yourselves. And when I say influence, I do not mean control. I do not mean that you can make somebody do what you want them to do, but you can have a level of influence on them. And that's one of the things that this year I've been praying for, is godly influence over my circle. And when I say I don't just want to influence you to where you think the way I think, I want to influence you in a way that's going to make you better and going to make me better. And so also don't lose yourself in your relationships, but allow your relationships to enhance who you are. It's like makeup. I don't know if y'all ever seen some of these extreme makeovers where the person looks like a totally different person. That's not the point of makeup. Makeup is supposed to accentuate your best features and cover your imperfections. Like the Bible says, love covers a multitude of sins in 1 Peter 4:8, and Proverbs 10:12. Love covers. Just like makeup. You're not supposed to look like a totally different person. You're supposed to look like you're enhanced. That's that better version of yourself, right? Um, and then understanding that relationships, it won't always be perfect, but there should always be growth and improvement. You should be causing each other to grow, whether that be in marriage, whether that be in parenthood, or whether that be in friendships. And I keep saying all these different types of relationships because at the end of the day, every relationship that you get in should be something that nurtures you and that pushes you closer to God and that makes you a better person for the world and for yourself, right? So regardless of the relationship, it should be something that makes you better and that makes them better. That's really all I had. for tonight. Again, I appreciate you all, and I am still open to hearing anything that you all have to say about anything that has been said over this last 45 minutes. Floor is open.
I missed the beginning, but this was really, really, really good. It was really good. Relationships are two people coming, marriage especially, two people coming together from different backgrounds, different everything, and it can be hard. It can be
Mm-hmm.
navigating just navigating the whole logistics of it all.
Right.
Tonight we were talking about knowing your identity in Christ before you join into a relationship because
Mm-hmm.
it guides you through. I think that is so, so, so important because going into these relationships, so many things arise, like so many things come up, and you go through so many things, you transition and you grow together. So you go
Mm-hmm.
through so many different things, and your relationship has to be rooted in Christ first in order for you to survive some of the storms that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
This was
Yep. That's actually exactly what I said in the beginning. I was saying that relationships, regardless of the type of the relationship, need God in order to be successful.
yeah, it's good.
So you spoke earlier about compromise. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's another in some of my friendships, compromise it causes a little tension. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you have certain friends that have stronger personalities, so they never want to compromise. And you
Mm-hmm.
find yourself being the one that backs up a little bit. Although you know it may be wrong that you always have to take this step. So how do we rectify that situation? Well, my thought would be, my cutoff game strong. So I'll leave you alone. If we can't find that common ground, hey, I'm done. I'm selfish and stubborn that way, but I would like to not do that as much. But what other options do you see when you have a friend that doesn't want to that doesn't understand? Hey, we got to work together on this to get this done.
I think it starts number one with prayer. I always ask God to till the ground before I have a conversation with people, especially a conversation that I feel like might be a hard conversation, or especially when there's something that I've been trying to communicate with them and they're just not getting or not receiving. I'm always asking God, till the ground, open their heart, make them receptive, you know. So that's number one. But number two, back when I said be a peacemaker and not just a peacekeeper, when you walk away, that's kind of like being a peacekeeper, because you're like, you know what, we're not even finna fight about this. It's not worth my time. I'm just gonna go on about my business. It may be keeping the peace. Y'all might not blow up any farther, but it's not making peace, and it's not causing that person to be accountable. If you leave them in that condition, then they're going to do the same thing to the next person. And so sometimes you have to be the mirror. You have to be the one to be like, hey, bro, listen, I understand what you're saying. And while I think it's a good idea, could we also consider this? And even if you have to bring up the fact that it seems a little one sided, you know, because a lot of times people will say, they'll say this, but they won't mean it. They'll say, well, I'm not always right, or it's not always my way. But then when it comes down to it, they act like they are always right. They act like it's always got to be their way. But it's like, can we try my way this time? You know, and sometimes you have to take those little steps with those people. Like, listen, I value our relationship. I value your input. I would like to think that you value my input as well. Could we try XYZ? Right? So you give them the opportunity to compromise. If they continue to not take the opportunity, it's okay to walk away. But if you don't ever truly communicate those things or truly turn it over to God, then most likely they're just going to stay stuck in that pattern and keep doing the same thing. And they'll end up having a high turnover of friends, if that makes sense.
Good stuff. I'll be back for the next one.
Anybody else? You got LaWanda and Jalen on the call. Tiffany, if you want to say anything else. And I know y'all might not be in a position where you can talk either. I understand, but just want to give you the opportunity.
I was just listening to the conversation and it was pretty good. I didn't really have any input because I agreed with everything that y'all mentioned. But yeah, just good discussion.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for listening in. Prayerfully, it helps. Let me check the chat right quick. Okay, I don't think anybody said anything specifically in the chat. But again, I did want to say I thank you all so much for joining the conversation, for making it a rich conversation, for asking questions, for, bringing insight, all of those things we teach each other here. And so I just appreciate each and every one of you. If there is no other comments, no other questions, no other concerns, we will conclude the call now. But if you happen to think of something later, y'all know how to reach me. Send me a message, and I will try to address the questions as the Lord leads. I love y'all. Have a good one.